Hello everybody, I'm Scott Poynton and welcome to another Cooey podcast. In this episode, Global Worming, I'm speaking with Sara Moledor, who knows a lot about vermicomposting. Yes, that's worm farming. So I'm continuing the theme from my last Cooey podcast with Bryony Taylor at the International School of Geneva. Sara's experience with earthworms is in a very different place. Sara is from Akron, Ohio in the US, and after spending some of her early life travelling and studying abroad, she found herself at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon, where she completed her master's looking at ways to introduce vermicomposting to Lebanon. She won the first ever Abi Lama Eco Entrepreneurship Award that allowed her to stay for another year to really test her ideas in the field. After some great experience introducing worm farming in a few different contexts throughout Lebanon, learning lots of practical lessons, it was time for a new challenge. And so it came to be that she learned about the work I and my colleague, Julian Troussier, were doing to introduce worm farming into Palestine. Sara joined the team and I spoke to her a few months back after she and Julian had just returned from Palestine. It looks as though we have a great opportunity to get the project up and running. So let's listen to Sara to hear how things are progressing, but also to hear just a few more little things about the joy of worms. Hello, Sara. How are you?
Good. How are you?
So you mentioned before about the joy of the worm. You talked about, if it's normal composting is okay, but pass it through a worm, it's even better. Tell us about that. Why is passing the waste through the worm even better? Tell us about the joy of worms. They're fantastic creatures, aren't they, really?
Yeah, they really are. And I mean,
tell me about the panda. Come on, we have to get that out there.
All right. So recently I read an article and it was entitled Why We Should Save the Earthworms and Not the Pandas. And it's just the title is pretty telling. Pandas are kind of a sexy animal to throw your weight behind. And they're so cute and adorable. Of course, everyone is attracted to the panda. But ultimately, when it comes down to what's important for our ecosystem, the earthworm, I recently found out is number one, most important for the survival of humanity on Earth.
There you go.
Right. And so this is largely because of their highly efficient digestive tracts. They have tons and tons of microorganisms in their system. And so when waste passes through, and what I should say is they actually don't eat organic waste. They eat all the little bugs and microorganisms that are already in the waste.
Right.
It goes through them, and what comes out the other end is earthworm manure, but it's teeming with microorganisms, and these are great. It's like the earthworm manure is probably the best thing you can put in your soil. So when you add it to your soil, you're not only getting all the beneficial microorganisms, but it's also adding any kind of organic matter to the soil will hold. It increases the water holding capacity of the soil, and it aerates the soil. It improves the texture of the soil, and then earthworms themselves burrow through the soil, so that's increasing aeration and drainage. So you can put vermicomposting in your soil. You can also just put worms in your soil, and that's another sort of more straightforward way to do it.
Yeah, but the problem is, of course, then we go and spray the soil with all sorts of chemicals. So they don't really like that, do they?
No, they don't.
And fertilizers and chemicals and stuff, not so good for worms.
Right.
And so, our modern farming practices over the last, generations have really depleted the soils, not just of nutrients, but of the worms and the microorganisms that we need to make things work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another practice on that note is plowing, which I've seen studies recently saying that plowing is maybe not the best option. Like no-till is what they're promoting, at least at the university where I was studying. And they came out with an article recently talking about no-till. And part of the reason is because when you plow the land and you till it, you're breaking up the earthworm populations that are there, as well as the microorganisms, and you're letting a lot of the moisture escape.
Right.
So just letting them be in the soil is really seems to be the best way.
Yeah, I was in the US recently and people were talking about the rise of no-till agriculture there, which surprised me in a way because, you get the sense that, the big farmers, they like their machines, and it's the same in Australia.
Sure, we like machines, but also, think about the Fertile Crescent and people starting agriculture.
Right.
The image that we have is a cow pulling a plow. So yeah, it's ingrained.
It's ingrained. Well, you mentioned the Fertile Crescent. This is a great segue to Palestine. You've just come back from Palestine.
Yes.
What were you doing in Palestine? Tell us.
So I went to Palestine with one Mr. Julien Troussier of TFT, and we had gotten a lead. We think we may have found funding for a project, our project, the Earthworm Project, that's going to start in the West Bank, around the area of Bethlehem, we think. So it's a project we've been working on for a year, but I think overall for 4 years, right?
Yeah, well, a bit of background to that. I mentioned it in the introduction, but it was really at the invitation of the Palestinian ambassador in France. Julian and I went to visit him, and he invited us to go to Palestine just to go and have a look. And so sure enough, we went there, and what we found was that with climate change, temperatures are getting higher, rainfall is getting less, and when it comes, it's in very intense bursts. So it tends to wash away the soil. And these are soils that have been farmed for some thousands of years, most recently with a lot of chemicals. So, what we found was there wasn't a lot of organic matter in the soils. But at the same time, the communities there were asking for funding to make cisterns so they could catch the water, because water is such a huge problem. And but these cisterns are very expensive. They've got to get permission to build them, which often they don't. And one of the suggestions, this was back in 2013 when Julian and I first went there, was that they consider holding the water in the soil itself by increasing the organic matter in the soil. And we said, what do you use for fertiliser? Well, they can't use chemical fertilisers because, well, unfortunately, in the past, they can also be used to make bombs, and there is a concern for that. But they didn't seem to have any organic manure or any organic waste. And we looked at what was happening to the organic waste from their households, from restaurants, from farming practices, and they're all being taken down into the middle of the desert and dumped in a big hole and basically left there and burnt. And we said, well, hey, couldn't you use that organic matter to compost it and get it back on your fields, raise the organic matter in the fields, hold the water, and improve your farming practices? So there seemed to be real interest in that and real resonance. And so I went back again in the second half of 2014, went back twice, established some worm farms, didn't go well. Basically, all the worms of the guy who supplied me the worms died, and so the worms in Palestine died as well. But what was very clear was we really stimulated an interest. And we set one up with a women's group, and this was very positive. But unfortunately, they died. So we've been looking to try and get this project up and running since then. And how did you come to find us? This is a nice story in itself. How did you come to find about TFT and this strange idea of a worm farm project in the West Bank?
Good question. So
I know the answer.
So I was in Lebanon for 4 years, 3 years studying and working on my thesis. And then the last year was working on the project for which I'd gotten funding. And really at the end of 4 years, I was just ready to move on and try a new place. But, I was so taken by how well the whole vermicomposting project had gone that I thought this is maybe my edge. This is
who
my
you
specialty.
are.
Yeah.
You're an earthworm person.
Yeah. So I thought maybe I could go to Palestine. And why Palestine? I had been trying to learn Arabic in Lebanon, and if you speak English and French already, learning Arabic is actually challenging. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted to go to Palestine. I think it's just easier a language to learn there. But also it's just a country or, a place I had heard a lot about, and I just really wanted to go visit it. So I found myself typing the words vermicomposting West Bank into Google just to see what I would find. And to my surprise, I found this commentary, I think it was a blog, that Scott had written about a few years earlier, the time that he'd spent there trying to start the worm farms. And so I decided to write an email, and I had no idea who he was. I just thought, I'm going to write this guy an email and see if there's some way I could learn more and possibly get involved. And, my hopes are not very high at this point. I'm just...
You're just sending out some signals, raising a flag.
Yeah, exactly. Casting a net.
Yep.
And to my surprise, I get an email back saying, hey, we tried to get this project going. It didn't go very well in the beginning, but we would like to get back into it. And we need someone to join our team. So
someone who actually knew something about vermicomposting, as opposed to me, who'd done a bit in my backyard, but that was about it.
Right. So yeah, that's how I came aboard. And it took a while. It was, I think we were just talking for a year, and we were reading each other's proposals and going back and forth. And then it was almost exactly a year ago that I officially started working with the Earthworm team.
You're listening to a Cooey podcast with Scott Poynton. Read about this episode and listen back to more Cooey podcasts at scottpoynton.com.
And here you are. So you've been to Palestine, and we'll talk to Julian later. He couldn't join us today, unfortunately, but we'll talk to Julian and get his sense. But you had a great trip, I think, and there's a sense that funding could be about to come along, and some real interest with some partners there in Palestine to host the project. Tell us about that.
Sure. So it was actually part of the reason we were invited. This lady that we met, Ann Birdie, wanted to connect us specifically with the center. It's called the Karama Center. That means dignity in Arabic. And this is just a really small, like, dare I say, primitive building. It's right outside Bethlehem. And it actually serves as a place, as a space for Palestinians and settlers to come together, and mostly children or youth, and to meet each other. And I was really inspired by the stories I heard. There are two people who are running this organization. One guy, his name is Shaul, and he's a settler. The other guy, Ali, is Palestinian. And they wanted to bring young people together so that they could actually meet each other and sort of put a human face on what would otherwise remain as the enemy.
The conflict.
Sure. So what they're doing it's really amazing work. And so this lady, Ann Birdie, wanted to put us in touch with them and see if maybe this could be the start to our project. Maybe we could start here. Because up until now, we've been working on a proposal and looking for funding, but we really just wanted to get our feet on the ground and really just start somewhere, even if it's small, even if it's maybe not the place where the project will continue. We just really want to get started somewhere. So we met with these people and we told them about our idea and the project and the vision. And we think that they really complement each other, actually, because the center is very, it has a big social aspect to it. Kids meeting each other, conflict, peace building. And what it doesn't have is very much sort of physical attributes. So we checked out the land, and it's really just a small space, but we think it would be perfect to start a vermicomposting facility. And I'm just talking something small here, just a really small greenhouse with plastic, made with plastic, where we could start the facility, and then also have sort of a permaculture side to it as well. So
the kids can actually do something when they come and get their hands dirty and get their feel the worms and get a bit of soil, get a bit of soil under their fingernails. And
up until now, I think, at least in my opinion, the project had been more like ecology and environmentally, we were sort of approaching it from that angle. But now, still holding on to that, I think we can bring in the peace building side of things. So it would be really great to bring in kids from different communities. And mind you, a lot of these settler kids live in these areas and they're afraid. There's fear between both communities, and they may live in the middle of Palestinian lands and never have actually met a Palestinian. So this is, the Karama Center, and what we're hoping to do will really be providing a space for these kids to come together, and what better activity than building the soil.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty non-political, and that's really important for a project like this, because obviously Israel and Palestine is a super hot topic. So that's another really great aspect to the project, is that it's not political, or at least
it's certainly always been the intention. Yeah, keep it apolitical and just get in there and look at how we can heal the land, really. And I think it was always our intention to focus on that, but really we focused more on the ecological side of it because it just seemed a more straightforward way. But now with the link up with the Karama Center, I think we can be more explicit about the fact that we actually really see this as a peace building project. Because if we can get these kids and people involved in this, heal the land, we might stand a chance of healing some of the relationships between the people, because people in the West Bank are leaving their land, and there is this sort of disconnect from their culture, and I think that creates its own pressures and tensions, and there seems a real interest to try and re-establish that link. Certainly when I was there in 2014, and when Julian and I were there in 2013, there was a real interest in that, of trying to rehabilitate lands that were really being abandoned as people had to go over into Israel to work every day. That was how they were earning their living, and not so much on the land. So I think there are real, the peace building aspects of it are really strong. And the Karama Centre sounds like a great place for us to get started. But what are the plans beyond that? I mean, hopefully, we're not started at the Karama Centre yet, so we can't get ourselves too excited. But what's the vision for the project, Sarah, going forward?
So first, we really wanted to just create a base. So, I mean, Julian and I both kind of came to this conclusion, but for me, it was a result of my project in Lebanon, where I had a lot of small projects in villages, and I was constantly begging people to please let me do this project on your land. And it worked out, but in the end, it's not very nice to approach a project from the position of having to beg for something and then taking pity on this strange foreign girl.
For this poor girl from Ohio.
Right.
Give her a bit of land. She wants to do something with worms.
I'm sure a lot of people just participated because they felt bad for me. I know it. So I thought it would be really nice to start this project, have a little more strength. So to speak.
The proper base.
Yeah, and really create a base where we can get started. We can build up a worm population, because that's going to be really important. Currently, we've only found worms available for sale in Israel, so we're going to have to get them from there. But we hope to develop the population so then we can distribute worms from there. So we'll get this center started on the little piece of land at the Karama Center. Get it going, tailor the process. We'll definitely have some problems here and there, but we'll have to tailor the process. It'll be a learning process. And then we can bring kids in and show them what we're doing, and we can bring farmers and show them what we're doing, and hopefully have workshops and offer, show them how to do this at a home scale. So if you have just like a small plastic box to put your kitchen waste in, how do you maintain it? So we'll have a base, and then from there, we'll start doing little extension projects in communities, in schools, with farmers, maybe with a women's association. It would be great if we could build it up to a municipal service. And actually, that's another thing. We met a guy who's in charge of waste management in the Bethlehem area, and he's very interested as well. So we could maybe partner with them and do something. We also met the brother of Ali. His name's Fadi, and he is from a village called Beit Umar, which is maybe 10 minutes away by car, I believe. And coincidentally, this happens to be one of the villages where Scott visited on his first trip.
That's where we first were, in Beit Umar. So it's pretty cool that it's such a coincidence, yeah.
Right. So Fadi's idea, and this was sort of going along our ideas as well, is to bring vermicomposting to a village and get every household to do vermicomposting. Because it's a village and everyone knows each other, and in this kind of culture, you're very influenced by what your neighbor's doing. So it could work really well in that context. So that'll be maybe another avenue for us to pursue. And then ultimately, the earthworm is great, and vermicomposting will be sort of the foundation block of the project. But ultimately, we'd like to have an impact on the whole food system. So how can we encourage more sustainable agricultural practices? And, how do we retain water in the soil? How do we promote more local markets? So how can we have a greater impact overall on the food system and nutrition as well? And
nutrition as well, yeah. I think the project's got lots of avenues. It's got the peace building avenue, it's got the soil rehabilitation avenue, the water retention, but bringing people together to discuss these things. I'm sure it can go in all sorts of directions. We've got partners keen in Israel as well. I mean, as you say, there already were vermicomposting people there in Israel, but the Givat Haviva Centre, we've talked to them in the past, and they're really keen on getting something going. So, we're excited, and we've always been excited by the project, and we think that we got great scope to do some interesting things here. So we'll keep people posted. We'll keep people posted on Sarah's Worms, as we call it. What did you call it? Global worming.
Yes.
Global worming project. And because we think from Palestine to Israel and then beyond, this project can go global.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think there's great scope for it. So let's see where we go, and we'll be looking forward to hearing updates from you and posting blogs and pictures as you get going. And fingers crossed the funding comes through, and it certainly sounds like the people at the Karama Centre are on for it. Mm-hmm. So I think we've crossed the threshold here, and it's going to be game on.
Yeah.
So all that stuff you learned in Lebanon is about to be put into some really interesting practice.
Yep, I agree.
Thanks for talking to us, Sarah.
Of course.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, keep us posted.
I will.
Cheers.
Bye.
You've been listening to Global Worming, another Kui podcast. Thanks to Sara Moledor for sharing her passion for worm farming with us. I'm super excited about our project in Palestine and will keep you updated on our progress there. We're expecting project kickoff to happen in September. More on that then. In my next Kui podcast, we'll hear the voices of people working in the forest industry in the southeast of the United States. I travelled there in April, and the good news is they're not at all evil. I'm Scott Poynton. Thanks for listening.